Okay, let's take a look at how we might design a smart contract to manage a digital asset. So here, to be specific, let's create certificates for MIT courses. So we're going to do this for professional education, say, where they're going to issue MIT certificates, and we want to put those certificates into the blockchain. So here we're going to start off with a very simple certificate that has a title. So for example, this would be the course Machine Learning, the student that receives the certificate. So for example, this would be Fred Blogs, the date that the certificate is issued, and a pointer to a URL where we can store other data associated with the certificate. For example, we might have the image of a paper certificate there and other details about this certificate, but this would be the main data structure, and this would be a struct in Solidity language. And the main thing that does all the work is this mapping from certificate ID to an actual certificate. So index to certificate will be, you can imagine it like an array, and if we get the first element of the array, then it'll return the first certificate. The second element of the array would return the second certificate, etc. We can have other variables in this basic contract. We're going to keep track of the total contracts minted, but not much else, because we want this to be cheap to deploy and cheap to run. And so this data structure needs to be quite small. We're going to have to pay gas every time we create a certificate, for example. So we need that gas to be as little as possible. Okay, let's take a look at how this is implemented in the Solidity language. So here we're in Remix. Let me move this over a little. So here is our struct for the certificate. Title, student, date, and URL, and these are going to be 32-byte structures, so pretty minimalistic as far as size goes. We're going to keep track of the total number of minted certificates. Now here's our mapping function. So this does all the work. Given an integer, so this would be the ID, for example, of the certificate, it'll return to us a certificate. So when we get certificates, for example, we pass in the index or a string of indices that we need, and this will return to us a certificate or a list of certificates. Okay, so get certificates allows us to look at all the certificates we've minted, and here's our mint function where we're going to pass in the title, student, date, and URL, and then we're going to create this certificate data structure, and we're going to put it into this index to certificate. It looks like we've got a invalid call here, and oh, I know why that is. It's because I believe this, no, we'll see. Why is this? No, it's gone. Okay, we're good. So that's our main capability. Finally, we have transfer ownership. So we're going to mint these certificates, and they're all going to be owned by the CEO. So the CEO, for example, of professional education, and then he can transfer, or she can transfer the ownership to the actual student. So this would be from the CEO to the student, a particular certificate. So that's now issuing it to the student, to his public key, for example, on Ethereum. And that's basically it. The main, we've got a few things here. We're emitting these things into the log. The birth of the certificate, the transfer of the certificate, so we can keep track of these things and inform the student that they now have this certificate. Then we've got a few helper functions mainly of moving strings to bytes. Solidity and the blockchain requires that we are very frugal about data structures. So that's the main work in the actual blockchain. Now we need capability to actually manipulate the blockchain. So let me just compile that. You can see it's compiled. We need to get, the main things we need to get are the application binary interface, so we get a copy of that we can use. So programmatically now, outside the blockchain, we're going to program through this interface and give birth or construct certificates and get them and view them or transfer them. Okay, so that compiles. Now I'm going to show you the environment here. So the environment that we're running in is that we're running Ganesh, so that's a local blockchain. So this is Ethereum, but a local version of it. So we'll spin it up, and I've got a separate video on how this works, but you'll see that it makes a number of certificate keys, private keys and public keys, and here it's already being called. Now to deploy the contract onto the blockchain, we need to go into the, I'm going to squish this down so you can see it here. So we're in Remix, so that's the development environment for Solidity and Ethereum. We need to go to Run. We need to select now, we need to select the web providers. Because I'm running a local blockchain, there's an object we need to get to address that blockchain, and it's called Web3. So I'm going to point this at localhost 8545 port. And now Remix is talking to my local blockchain. So I can deploy this contract. Let me move this up so you can see it being deployed. Okay, so deploy the contract. Here it's already deployed, and I can get the address. So copy the value to the clipboard. I'm getting the address now of where that contract is, so I can talk to it. What do I mean by talk to it? Well, we're going to develop a little user interface here. So for example, here's a user interface, and we're going to input things like the course title. So we might machine learning, student name, Fred blogs, course date 08 15 2018. Okay, and then we can issue a certificate. Because we're talking to this local blockchain, we should be able to issue a certificate. But before we do that, we need to make some changes to the code behind this. So let's take a look at this code. It's obviously HTML code, but it's a little bit more complicated than that. So here I've got an index HTML, and here's the code for it. So we start off with some basic HTML here. So we're going to be able to output things about the course, and so these are inputting the course title, the student name, the course date, etc. Now we've got some buttons. We can issue certificate, transfer a certificate, or get the last certificate. Actually, we can get any certificate, but I should say get certificate. So given a certificate ID, we can get it. Now we need to point this at our local blockchain, and we do that by setting up this HTTP provider, which is this localhost 8545. If you remember, that's what my blockchain is running on. This guy was running on 8545. Okay, so here we get this Web3 object. We pass to it the application binary interface of the contract here. So here we need to cut and paste. Let me go back to my contract. So if I go back here, I need to cut and paste this ABI. So I can copy it here. I go into this. I delete this here because this is an old ABI. Wait a minute. Here we go. It's quite a long data structure, but you'll get used to it. Here we are, nearly there. Right, I need to delete up to there and put in the new one. There it is. So that data structure is in there. Okay, and it'll pretty it up as soon as I save it. So there's that data structure. And now we need to get the contract address that we deployed the contract to on our local blockchain. So now again, I need to go back to our run here where we deployed the contract, and let me copy the address. So now I've got copied, I want to move this across so you can see what I did there. So I went from compile to run, we deployed, and down here we can copy the copy value to clipboard. So now I've got the address. I go back here and I've got to input that address. Let me scoot this along a bit so you can see. Yeah. Okay. So this was the old address. I need to delete that, copy that in. So now we've got the address of our contract. Save this, go back here, and let me go to, here is my, now this is running the latest code. Now we can talk to and course date 08 show 5218. Okay, and we can issue a contract. Let me show this. It's issuing. Here you'll see the contract on that blockchain. I don't know if you saw it there. There it is. So we've now issued that contract. And we've got an out of gas exception. I've got some problems with this, but we can issue the contract. We can transfer the contract. So here I'm transferring the contract from the CEO to the student, and we can get the certificate and take a look at the details of that. Okay, so that's basically how it works, and debugging it is a major issue. Of course, we can bring up, this is the development tools for Chrome, and we can see what's going on when we're interacting with the Web3 object. And so that's the main way that we're debugging all of this. We can watch the blockchain for events. So get certificate is an event, and if we look at the here, we can see that get certificate, there's a result, and I'm having some issues with hexadecimal to string, but that's basically how we can interact and deploy certificates to the smart contract on the blockchain. Okay.